I can tell you a little bit about OffBeat. OffBeat is a kind of a strange animal. We are an independent music and culture magazine that was started in New Orleans in 1988. And our mission for the magazine was to support, market, and promote the local musicians, and also to support the music business infrastructure and develop the music business infrastructure. So there are probably in the country, maybe not even the world, I don't know, but there are not that many publications like ours. And as everyone knows, print media is being extremely stressed right now in all different ways. And OffBeat has managed to hang on for 33 years. And what's happened in the past 2 to 3 months, obviously with the pandemic, is that our print media, we have print, we have a website, we have a social media, we have a weekly newsletter that goes to 55,000 subscribers. We have an event that we do, the Best of the Beat Awards, every year. But our revenue source has been, just like most print publications, especially small print publications, has been generated from the print. And all our clients, or the bulk of our clients, who used to advertise with us, which is, OffBeat is not, it is a for-profit, not a nonprofit, have gone out of business or not in business right now. And we've decided, and it's probably a good kick in the pants that we had to go mostly digital. What I'm struggling with is lack of money. Obviously, we're actually doing a GoFundMe page right now, which is doing well, but it's not going to carry us for more than the summer, I would imagine, or even less than that, if we don't print a magazine. And lack from me and also from my staff in putting a digital product out there that's really, for lack of a better word, kick-ass, okay? And I know that needs to be done, and I was really looking to this group to give me some suggestions on what they think are cutting edge things that we could do to help save the magazine, make it better, and create a really great digital product, while at the same time not having to spend a lot of money to do it. Because that's, as a small business, anybody who's in a small business knows that you have to keep your costs down. And right now, not only do we not have the money for costs, we don't have the money to pay anybody to do anything either. So we're doing the best we can. We've gone all digital for our May issue, which is typically the Jazz Fest Bible, from which we make roughly, I'd say, 30 to 40% of our annual revenue. We have a digital issue up, but the revenue from that is pretty tame, very, very small, actually. We're not in the, if you talk about New Orleans and New Orleans as a whole, the problem is that we're a live music town, and almost everyone that I do business with, that I know that is in live music, that's a musician, a music business, whatever, we're all kind of in the same boat, because the French Quarter Festival, which is a huge festival too, a lot of people don't know about the French Quarter Festival, and the Jazz Fest are the biggest revenue producers for musicians and bands and production people and anything to do with live music, and we all depend on them to get us through the summer, which in New Orleans is pretty bad. I mean, in terms of live music production and live music performance. So I guess, Keith is not exactly in the same situation as I'm in, because he works for the local newspaper, although Keith does understand Offbeat a lot because he was actually our first long-term editor. So I've known
Well,
Keith.
hey, Jan.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, when you were saying a second ago about not having the money to pay people, it reminded me of the early days of Offbeat, actually. So
Yes,
that was taking
exactly
me back.
right.
It's taking me back.
Exactly. And so now we're kind of, back to that, unfortunately. But everybody is sort of in the same boat. We just happen to be a small business, and like all the other businesses, like all the clubs, for example. And Keith, I don't see Keith on my phone here for some reason, but I guess that's okay.
I look pretty much the same. You're not missing anything. Everything Janice said in kind of her opening monologue is certainly true. Back in the early days of the magazine in the late 80s and early 90s, it was very much a DIY operation, total guerrilla. It started off in her living room, and I remember sleeping on her couch many a night because the only computer any of us had was right there. So it's really an amazing thing that she's kept Offbeat alive all these years. Because again, as she said, print media in general has had a tough time, and music media it's a very tough thing. And New Orleans is a tough environment. I mean, it's not a town with a whole lot of money. So to support a magazine devoted to music and culture is no easy undertaking by any stretch of imagination. And she talked about how, I now work for the daily newspaper here in town, which has more resources. But again, we've all felt the pinch of what's going on as well. All of us had to take a 1 day of furlough every 2 weeks. So essentially a 10% pay cut right now. And some other folks on the staff were furloughed entirely. So they're not making a salary at all, just getting their medical insurance paid. So again, we're better off than a lot of people. But yeah, the lack of advertising has definitely affected the big dailies as well. And, so far my beat, even though I don't have any live shows to go review, there's still been plenty to write about. I've been writing about musicians battling coronavirus and musicians unfortunately dying of coronavirus, and reviewing a lot more albums than I had been reviewing, just because, again, I'm not reviewing live shows. So everybody's getting an album reviewed now. People that I probably wouldn't have reviewed ordinarily are going to get an album reviewed now. And also, unfortunately, I've been writing about the festival season here in New Orleans, which, as Jan was saying, really is lifeblood for the music scene here. That stretch from French Quarter Fest to Jazz Fest really gives a lot of musicians the money they need to get through the slow summer months. I interviewed George Porter Jr., the bassist from the Meters, one of the most prominent bands come out of New Orleans recently, and he was talking about how he makes probably 20% of his income for the year during Jazz Fest. And he's fortunate to still make royalty money from those old Meters recordings that are sampled on pop records and things like that. But still, 20% of his income comes from the gigs he does at the fairgrounds, at the festival itself, and all the night gigs that he plays in clubs. So, if a guy like that is making 20% of his income, you can imagine that lesser known musicians really need that concentration of gigs during the 10, 11 day span of the festival to make ends meet. So, and as Jan was saying, and welcome back, Jan.
You're saying me now.
Yeah, it extends to publications that, or to businesses that are dependent on music industry, and Offbeat being one of the big ones. And so, Jan, I was just talking a little bit briefly about the early days of the magazine, and kind of just for some historical perspective, let's go back there for a second. And I know, as you said, I was one of the early editors of the magazine in the early 90s. Well, what was your initial vision for the magazine? Because, it was kind of always a hybrid of covering it with some sort of journalistic distancing, but also there was an advocacy element to it as well. Is that safe to say? Yeah. What was your vision initially?
Well, I think that the original vision was an advocacy role. However, there was another music magazine at the time, and as you know, and that magazine went out of business. And
Wavelength, you're talking about?
Pardon me?
Wavelength, you're talking about.
Wavelength, yeah,
Wave,
Wavelength.
right,
Wavelength
right.
went out of business, and in fact, the owner of Wavelength wanted me to buy the magazine, and it was not really a good business deal. But that, besides that, um, I thought I was a business person, not a journalist, but I thought that there was a real need in New Orleans for attention to music. Okay, and that could include everything from advocacy to music journalism, because you may not remember, you probably do know this, there was no music writer at the Times-Picayune. They had no music writer.
Which is worth noting. It's incredible, but when you think about it, the major daily in New Orleans, the Times-Picayune, in New Orleans, Music Town, didn't have a staff music writer until right around, I think it was 1990, 91, when they hired Scott Ages, who became the first full-time music writer. Up to that point, they were just using freelancers,
Exactly.
including right when I got out of college, I started doing, I wrote about heavy metal bands and country bands because Scott Ages didn't like either one of those. So I ended up writing all those sorts of things. And
Yeah,
meanwhile,
right.
I joined you at OffBeat and became editor there and did that for a few years. But yeah, so you were covering the local scene. OffBeat was covering the local scene, and it was very much filling a void that wasn't being covered by the Daily, really, at that point.
Exactly. And then I think my take on it was that because I started as a business person, and I actually had made a lot of noise as a business person to talk about music and how important it was to the city, that the people who had the Times-Picayune at the time thought, well, gee, maybe we should be writing about music, and that's where, they hired Scott. I mean, I remember when, I talked to Scott before he even started the gig, and so, it was good that, OffBeat kind of spawned this interest in music, but over the years, and you can attest to this, there was a period of time when there was a lot more interest in music, I think, and live music than there is now. I mean, the music scene has changed considerably for a lot of reasons, obviously, because first of all, the internet, and streaming, and the demographics of the people that live in New Orleans now has changed quite a bit as well. So
well, and that's true, but one of the other changes is, and it's something that Jazz Fest has faced as well, has been just sort of the attrition of that kind of generation of sort of legendary classic New Orleans artists that basically built the town's reputation as a music town. Those guys, a lot of them were still around in the early 90s and what have you, and
right,
late 90s.
exactly.
And now a lot of them have died off, but back in,
Exactly.
in the early days, we could do, super long interviews with, Earl King and Snooks Eaglin and Art Neville and, Fats Domino was still around then, Dave Bartholomew,
Right.
all those guys were still around. So, for me as a guy that was just kind of learning the ropes of writing about music in New Orleans, it was an incredible opportunity to have access to these sort of guys. And I always thought of OffBeat as being sort of the Rolling Stone of New Orleans, kind of like where we would do these long feature stories and interviews, but also news coverage and reviews, and kind of have it be that mix of stuff. And you were kind of the advocacy part of it, and I was kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of the journalism part of it. And it seems like that balance, you guys have maintained that balance. Even as we've lost all these legends, the scene has continued to renew itself, i.e. the band that's on the cover of your current May digital issue, Sweet Crude. There's a bunch of musicians who are in their early 30s at most, who weren't born when I was the editor of OffBeat, practically.
Right, got it.
But yeah.
Like, Jesus. Well, and the other thing is that a difference in the people who go out to listen to live music, for the most part, on a regular basis, are people who are not married with families, and I mean, they're younger people, okay? And that's just a normal thing.
Right.
And, a younger audience now, many of whom have moved to New Orleans from other cities, are more interested in different types of music, like, singer-songwriter and pop music and hip hop, okay? And, the market has changed, and I always wanted to feel that the magazine was relevant to what was going on now. I mean, we have to always honor the past and the heritage, because that's a real important thing in the New Orleans music lexicon, really. I mean, the heritage and the passing that's real important. But that is all also now being passed down to people who are doing hip hop and other kinds of music, you know. So we always try to be relevant there. And I mean, and we're going to continue to do that, because I don't believe in, you know, that music dies, you know, different kinds of music dies. I mean, it evolves and changes, and we have to honor that, you know. What I've also found, though, and this is something that you know, is that people who are under a certain age just don't read magazines anymore. You know, they don't.
They certainly don't subscribe to
Or
newspapers.
magazines.
I can tell you that. Yeah. They don't subscribe to newspapers. It's funny. I always tell people, if you do subscribe to the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, as our unwieldy name is, if you look on the letters to the editor page, people have to put their name and then occupation. It's all retired. Yes, a lot of those people that write, and it's granted, it's because those people have, they have time to write letters to the paper because they're retired. But you know, so many of them are retired teacher, retired pharmacist. You know, so the print product is definitely an older demographic, for sure. And it probably is the same way with OffBeat. I mean, the people that subscribe out of town to OffBeat, these are, for the most part, I would guess, middle-aged and older fans of New Orleans music who kind of grew up in that sort of classic period of New Orleans music, came to Jazz Fest in the 90s and the 2000s and that sort of stuff, and they fell in love with it then, you know, and that kind of defined their impression of New Orleans music. You know, but that said, you know, the pivot to digital, which you guys are trying to do now, more so than you have been, and mainly because of necessity, like you don't have the advertising right now to support the print product. Have you thought about going to like a digital subscription model, which is what you've done?
Absolutely, absolutely, we have. Yeah, that's in the works, actually. We have thought about that, and we have done things like, you know, we do a lot more videos now, and you know, I'm an old lady, but I have young people working for me, always have, because that's much more fun to me. You know, I enjoy the change, you know, and you have to embrace change. You do, if you want to especially if you want to keep a business alive, and the business I have, because, you know, I don't have a business. I don't have a medium that focuses on anything but music and culture, and to a smaller extent food, because food is such a big part of the culture here. But, you know, and if you're going to concentrate on, you know, entertainment, I guess, I mean, you have to change with the times, you know, you have to do.
Well, and that said, that you still got, you know, you still have some of the veteran guys that write for you. I mean, in the May digital issue, John Wirt did the Sweet Crude story, I think, and John Swenson did the John Papa Grow interviews. So, I mean, those are both, you know, like myself, they are not youngsters. You know, they've been writing for a long time. So you gotta have the seasoned hands. What's that?
I said they have a few years on you, you know.
Yeah, they may have a couple. A couple. But I'm, you know, but yeah. But that said, you like
young writers. I mean, I like to hear from young writers, and you know, we have young writers, you know, producing for us now, like Amanda. I mean, Amanda's in hip hop. She likes hip hop. You know, we've done Raj Smooth and you know, lots of other hip hop type and DJs, actually, you know. It's a tight walk, really, a tight wire walk, because, you know, it used to be that we used to have to decide what we'd cover to satisfy the Jazz Fest, the subscribers versus the readers who picked up the magazine free. And we still have to do that to a certain extent. But now, you know, we have to try to appeal to readers who don't read, you know, who just
which is tricky. Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, they're not into the reading. They're more into the experience. They're into Instagram and visuals.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, I know you understand, because you are the original long form writer, which is one of the things I love about you. You know, I mean, you know, you write like 5,000 word pieces, and we'd have to split them up into 2 months, you know, because we couldn't fit them all in.
Oh, the infamous Zachary Richard interview that Michael Tisserand and I did. That's
Yeah, right.
Two issues. I think it was like 8,000 words or something crazy.
Yeah, something like that. You know, I mean, those were the kind of like the good old days. But,
Yeah.
you know, you have to adjust. I mean, if you're going to have a business, if I had my way, and I'm, like I said, I'm an old lady, I'd have long form everything. But, you know, I can't afford to publish it anymore, and who in the hell's going to read it? So we have to keep the thing is, our basis is, we want to keep the music scene alive, healthy, and the musicians alive, healthy, growing, and also the people that support the musicians alive, healthy, growing.
Sure.
So I'm still into all of those things. You know, the challenge is, you know, how to do it, how to keep relevant, how to keep solvent, to be able to do that. You know.
Well,
so,
and y'all are, I mean, a fairly lean and mean operation. I mean, what's your full-time staff, right? I mean, before this all went down,
I have 5 people.
5 people full-time.
5,
right.
Yeah, right. And, you know, we still have a lot of freelancers and freelance photographers, etc. You know, so it's still very small, very lean, which has not been a benefit, frankly, when you apply for a small business loan. You know, if you know anything about this, if you have a lot of 1099 employees, which we do, they don't count towards your payroll.
Mm. Right. So it puts you at a disadvantage. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't count towards your payroll. So, which to me is sort of a, you know, kind of a slap in the face, because without our freelance people, which is the case with most small publications, you don't hire people full time because you can't afford to. You know. Right. I mean, you just you know, the Advocate Times-Picayune has you're the music writer, and occasionally, you know, one of the other writers will throw in something, you know, but you do most of the music writing.
Right.
You know?
Right. And as well as other things as well.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Now we also, our owner owns Gambit as well, so we've got folks that are right there. They're kind of all in the same pool of people as well. So so we can draw on that as well. So but I mean, we're maybe the model that a lot of papers go to, in the sense that we're kind of, we're privately held by a single owner that has some resources and kind of bought us and consolidated us to hopefully give us an opportunity to thrive. But, as I said earlier in the conversation, I mean, this is the ad revenue has taken a huge hit at our publication as well. And so we're all, taking one furlough day every couple of weeks, so we've all taken a 10% pay cut, and hopefully that'll be it. And we'll go back once this all recovers. But the bottom line is, people, I think, know sort of that publications are important, but if they go away, then they'll unfortunately then discover how important they really were. I think that's certainly true of OffBeat, because there is no other clearinghouse for that New Orleans music and culture coverage, like you guys are. Certainly not to the level of quality that it is, and the consistency and the diversity that you guys put out every month. So, if the scene were to lose that, it would be this sort of, cohesive voice that, that kind of is a bit of the, the storefront for the whole scene. It's kind of the, place where everybody can kind of pull up a chair and take a look and see what's going on. So if, that were to go away, that would be a huge loss.
Well, I thank you for saying that. I still have my foot in, in 2 worlds, actually. One, obviously, with the music and the musicians, and on the other side, with the people who support the musicians, the record labels and the, the publishers and the, and the live music clubs, etc. And I mean, the live music clubs and the bars are people who support what we do, and they are in dire straits.
Sure.
And the festivals too, for that matter. But, they don't know what they're going to do. I had a conversation yesterday with a bunch of the places on Frenchman Street. And, I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen and what they need to do and what their audience is going to look like in the next, over the summer. And, as you know, the summer is very bad for everybody, economically, because New Orleans is New Orleans economy is based on tourism and people visiting, you know,
and congregating in big groups.
And congregating in big groups and
Yeah.
partying. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do, and that's probably why we got sicker than some of the other states, obviously.
Well, it's a good thing we have the oil industry to fall back on. Oh, wait.
All right. Oops.
Oh, damn.
Oops.
Yes.
Oops. Oops. You know, oil is a negative per barrel now. You know.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's you know, never in a million years. I mean, I thought Katrina was bad, but we got through that. You know. And now this is a whole different, you know, it's a different ball game in my lifetime. So it's like, oh God, you know, now what's going to happen?
You've got to take some comfort and some satisfaction in the fact that the OffBeat GoFundMe campaign has gone. Seems like it's going really well. I mean, I think
it has gone well, but again, you know, that amount, you know, if we achieve our goal, even if we achieve our goal. It's only, and like, you know, George Porter was saying, you know, that the French Quarter Fest and the Jazz Fest is our bread and butter for the year.
Right.
And it's not just us, you know, it's anybody involved in live music, you know. If you've got the bread and butter for the year, you know, what are you going to do?
So when Jazz Fest initially postponed and said they were going to be in the fall, you were at least optimistic at that point that, yeah, okay, we can have this big fall issue to make it up. And now, of course, that's gone away as well. So yeah, so you're going to be going 2 years between Jazz Fest issues. So you got 2 years without that big influx of cash that helps sustain the business.
Right, and it's not just us; it's everybody who's involved in the community. You know.
Yeah.
So it's a serious problem, and everybody is trying to get their head around what is the live music scene in New Orleans going to look like. I mean, we support and we document and we talk about live music, but these people also, you know, give the musicians the opportunity to play. And I wonder, for example, when you have the musicians who are now doing all these live streams and stuff, you know, and making tips, they have the ability to do that. I'm wondering how long it's going to take people to not necessarily give them the tips that they, you know, because right now it's kind of new. You know, I talked to Ben Jaffe about this, and you know, it was an interesting conversation because, you know, we were talking about how are people going to change the way that they consume music? You know, they're having to change it now, obviously, but is that going to leave a permanent mark on everybody, not just in New Orleans, but worldwide, on how they perceive and enjoy music? I mean, it's kind of a sea change, actually. Absolutely. You know, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know.
Nope.
I'm going to jump in here for a second, guys. We got to move on to our next session, but please join this conversation in the breakout room.
Okay.
And I want to thank Jan, and I want to thank Keith. This has been awesome. I can actually listen to it for hours. So we will have our next session here in just a second. Thanks so much.
Thank you.